Georg sat by the window, the crisp autumn air whispering through the fallen leaves outside. The room was filled with a serene silence, only broken by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. It was a perfect setting for reflection, a moment to connect with the past. He unfolded the slightly yellowed paper, his father's familiar handwriting greeting him like an old friend. The ink had faded over the years, but the emotions it conveyed were as vivid as ever. Each stroke of the pen seemed to carry a piece of his father's soul, a fragment of a life lived with passion and depth.
Jan Olav's words, penned years ago, spoke of a love story, a fleeting encounter that had left an indelible mark on his soul. It was a tale of serendipity, of two souls meeting by chance and creating a moment that would last a lifetime. The letter was more than just words on paper. It was a window into his father's heart, a glimpse of a man Georg had never fully known. It was the story of the Orange Girl, a woman whose presence had illuminated his father's life, even if only for a brief moment. She was a beacon of light in a world that often seemed gray and mundane. A woman he had met once on a crowded street, her image forever imprinted in his memory. Her orange scarf fluttered in the wind, a splash of color against the monochrome backdrop of the city. She had looked back just once, and that single glance had changed everything.
Georg traced the lines of the letter, his heart heavy with a melancholic curiosity. He wondered what it was about this woman that had captivated his father so completely. What was it about that moment that had left such a profound impact? His father, a man who lived a life of quiet contemplation, had rarely spoken of love. He was a man of few words, someone who found solace in the simple pleasures of life. Yet, this letter revealed a side of him that Georg had never seen before. Yet here it was, poured onto these pages, a testament to a connection that transcended time and circumstance. The letter was a bridge between the past and the present, a reminder that love, in all its forms, is eternal. As Georg delved deeper into the narrative, he was transported back in time to a bustling city street where his father's story began. He could almost hear the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, the chatter of people going about their day, and the distant sound of a street musician playing a melancholic tune. The city was alive with energy, a place where dreams were born and stories unfolded. It was in this vibrant setting that Jan Olav had encountered the Orange Girl, a moment that would forever alter the course of his life. They had walked together, hand in hand, through the park, the autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet. It was a simple, yet profound moment, one that spoke of a connection that went beyond words. The orange scarf had become a symbol of their fleeting romance, a reminder of a love that was as brief as it was beautiful. Georg held the scarf in his hands, feeling the softness of the fabric, and wondered what had become of the Orange Girl. As he looked out of the window, Georg felt a deep sense of connection to his father. He realized that, in many ways, he was still searching for his own Orange Girl, a love that would leave an indelible mark on his soul. He carefully placed the letter back in its envelope, knowing that he would return to it again and again. It was a piece of his father's legacy, a story that would continue to inspire him for years to come. Georg sat by the window, the letter resting on his lap, and allowed himself to be enveloped by the memories and emotions it had stirred. The autumn leaves continued to fall, a reminder that, like the seasons, life is ever-changing, but the love we carry in our hearts remains eternal.
The city throbbed with life, a symphony of car horns and distant chatter. The streets were alive with the hustle and bustle of daily life, a cacophony of sounds blending into a unique urban melody. The air was thick with the scent of exhaust fumes and the distant aroma of street food, creating a sensory overload that was both overwhelming and exhilarating. Jan Olav, a young man then, found himself caught in the river of people flowing down the street. He moved with the crowd, feeling like a single drop in an endless stream, each person with their own destination, their own story. The city was a living, breathing entity, and he was just one of its many inhabitants, trying to find his place in the chaos. The world seemed to fade into a muted blur as his gaze fell upon her. It was as if time itself had slowed down, the bustling city around him becoming nothing more than a distant hum. His focus narrowed, and everything else seemed to lose its importance. She was the only thing that mattered in that moment, a beacon of light in the gray monotony of the city.
She stood out amidst the throng, a vibrant splash of color in a sea of gray.
Her presence was like a breath of fresh air, a burst of energy that cut through the dullness of the cityscape. The orange dress she wore was not just a piece of clothing, it was a statement. A declaration of individuality in a world that often seemed to blend into shades of gray. Her orange dress, like a burst of sunshine, drew his attention. It moved with a life of its own, catching the light and casting a warm glow around her. The fabric seemed to dance in the breeze, each fold and crease telling a story of its own. It was a sight that captivated him, pulling him in and refusing to let go. Her hair, the color of warm honey, cascaded down her back. It shimmered in the sunlight, each strand catching the light and adding to the aura of warmth that surrounded her. It was as if her hair was a golden waterfall, flowing gracefully and adding to her ethereal beauty. But it was her eyes that held him captive. They were windows to a soul that seemed both mischievous and kind, filled with a light that was both playful and profound. Her eyes told a story of their own, one that he was eager to learn more about. They sparkled with a mischievous joy, reflecting the clear blue sky above. It was as if the sky itself had found a way to manifest in her gaze, a boundless expanse of blue that promised endless possibilities. Her eyes were a mirror to the world, reflecting its beauty and its potential. In that instant, the world seemed to fall silent. The noise of the city faded into the background, and all that remained was the two of them, locked in a moment that felt both fleeting and eternal. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a quiet that was filled with unspoken words and shared understanding. The crowds disappeared, the noise faded, and only she remained, etched against the backdrop of the city. She was a constant in a world of change, a figure that stood out against the ever-shifting landscape of urban life. In that moment, she was all that mattered. A splash of orange in a sea of gray, a beacon of hope in a world that often seemed devoid of color.
Days turned into weeks as Jan Olav found himself drawn back to that street, hoping for another glimpse of the orange girl. Each day, he would walk the same path, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, yearning for a sign of her presence. The street had become a canvas of memories, each step echoing with the hope of a chance encounter. He searched for her in the faces of strangers, his heart skipping a beat at each flash of orange that caught his eye. The color had become a symbol of his longing, a beacon that drew his attention amidst the sea of people. Every time he saw a hint of orange, his pulse quickened, and for a fleeting moment, he believed he had found her.
He frequented cafes, his gaze sweeping over the patrons, hoping to find her nestled in a corner, lost in a book. The cafes became his sanctuaries, places where he could sit and imagine her presence, her laughter mingling with the clinking of cups and the murmur of conversations. He would order a coffee, sit by the window and watch the world go by, always with the hope that she would walk through the door. He wandered through bustling markets, the aroma of fresh bread and spices filling the air, yet none of it held his attention for long. The vibrant colors and lively sounds of the market were mere distractions, his mind always drifting back to her. He would pause at stalls, pretending to be interested in the wares, but his thoughts were always elsewhere, lost in the memory of her smile. His thoughts always returned to her, the mystery of her identity consuming him. He would sit alone, lost in contemplation, replaying their brief encounter over and over in his mind. Each detail, each moment was etched into his memory, a puzzle he was desperate to solve. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why had she left such a profound mark on his heart? Who was this girl who had so effortlessly captured his heart? He would look at photographs, trying to piece together the fragments of his memory, searching for clues that might lead him to her. The more he thought about her, the more elusive she became, like a dream that fades upon waking. She was a mystery, a riddle that he was determined to solve. Where did she go, this elusive muse who haunted his waking hours and filled his dreams with sunshine? She was a constant presence in his thoughts, a beacon of light that guided him through the darkness. He would lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining her beside him, her laughter echoing in his ears. She was his muse, his inspiration, and he was determined to find her, no matter how long it took.
Fate, it seemed, had a plan.
One late afternoon, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the park, I saw her.
She sat on a bench beneath a weeping willow, her orange dress a splash of color against the muted greens and browns of the approaching autumn.
My heart pounded in my chest as I approached her, a nervous excitement bubbling within me.
She looked up, her eyes widening in recognition.
Time seemed to stand still as our eyes met, a silent acknowledgement passing between us.
They talked for hours that evening, their conversation flowing effortlessly, as if they had known each other for a lifetime.
I learned her name was Anna, and she possessed a spirit as bright and vibrant as the colors she wore.
Their encounters became a cherished ritual, stolen moments of joy amidst the everyday routine.
We walked hand in hand through the park, our laughter echoing through the trees.
They shared dreams and fears, hopes and aspirations, their connection deepening with each passing day.
But our time together, like the fleeting beauty of summer, was destined to be short-lived.
One day, Anna simply wasn't there. He waited for her, his heart sinking with each passing hour.
Days turned into weeks, and the hope that had bloomed within me began to wither.
She was gone, vanished as quickly as she had entered his life, leaving behind a void that echoed with the memory of her laughter and the scent of oranges. Georg closed the letter, his father's words lingering in the air.
I could almost feel the weight of my father's longing, the bittersweet ache of a love that was never fully realized.
He looked out the window, watching as a young woman walked by, her bright yellow scarf a splash of color against the gray pavement.
A wistful smile touched my lips.
Life, it seemed, was a series of fleeting moments, of chance encounters that could leave an imprint on the soul.
My father had found his orange girl, and though their time together was brief, it had left an enduring legacy.
And Georg, lost in contemplation, realized with a start that perhaps, just perhaps, he had found his own.